Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Hey, what's that thing on the screen beside me? Stay tuned to find out.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with offices in Louisville and Bowling Green. Your host, five-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, the facts are in, and the experts agree. The number one fear of hardworking savers in retirement is running out of money. And it should be, because unless you've got a good old-fashioned working crystal ball handy there in front of you, someone looking into the future, obviously, there's no way you can predict it, with any certainty at least. Now let me explain. No one, again, can predict the markets. No one can predict interest rates. No one can predict your health. No one can predict, in our discussion of today's show, more particularly, the date of one's death. And as you can imagine, when it comes to using and enjoying your money in retirement, this uncertainty of knowing the date of one's death creates a huge set of problems for savers and increases the likelihood that somebody one day could run out of money. Well, welcome, folks, to the only TV show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement. I'm your host, fiduciary and retirement planning specialist, Tony Walker. And as Steve Harvey likes to say on Family Feud, man, we got a good one for you today. Because today, I'm going to introduce the biggest risk to your money in retirement. This is an obvious risk, folks, to people like myself who are in this business. But it's a risk also that Wall Street is very, very familiar with. Unfortunately, since they kind of control the narrative when it comes to money, they don't want savers to know about this risk. And it's associated with you living too long. So what is the biggest risk facing savers? It's longevity risk. And following today's program, it is my hope that you're going to have a very clear understanding of longevity risk and the other risks associated with longevity risk. And then secondly, and most importantly, after learning what this risk is, I'm going to show you how you can overcome this risk with one simple solution. You know, really, you think about it, I always like to wake up sometimes and I say, basically, I'm unemployed. I really am. I'm self-employed. I'm an independent fiduciary. And if I don't go out and talk to people, nothing happens. And my job when I'm talking to savers is really first and foremost is to minimize their risk. Yeah, we try to help people save money on taxes and fees and all that. But if we leave their money at risk when they're in retirement, folks, we are not doing our job, because the idea is, I like to tell people, I'm in the sleep insurance business. For you to sleep good at night, you have to know when you go to bed and that head hits that pillow, that when you wake up in the morning, your money's still there. And with longevity risk, what we're talking about on today's show, that you're not going to run out of money. All right, let's kind of go back, because I know we covered this some last week. We are going to take a deeper dive into the 4 risks that are associated with longevity risk. Again, the risk of running out of money. So the problem here's the problem. As you live longer than maybe you even planned, and we talked about this last week, we even talked about the statistics that a 65-year-old, okay, if you're alive at 65, there's a 50-50 shot that you could live to 94. I mean, for some of you, that's longer than you even worked in the workforce. So you've got to make the capital, that's your money you've saved, work for you. If you don't, you could one day run out of loot. Now, this notion of people living longer and longer is a huge issue. Again, 65-year-old, 50-50 shot, you could live to 94, 25% chance a 65-year-old could live upwards of 100 years of age. Perish the thought. I know my wife would hate to see me stumbling around at age 100. But anyway, unless you've got a chronic illness or a terminal illness, who knows, right? You could die tomorrow, or you could live another 30 to 40 years. And when you think about the idea of your money and where it's invested and positioned to last that long, well, no wonder so many people are worried about running out of money, and this whole idea of longevity risks enters the fray. Now, with longevity risk, what happens is there's 4 additional risks that are created because you're going to live longer. Let's go over those 4 risks. The first risk that you have to deal with because you're going to live longer in retirement is stock market risk. And again, over the next several weeks, we're going to do a deep dive into each one of these risks, okay? So think about this. If the market happens to go down, okay, over the last 7 years, in fact, Aaron, let's throw up this chart. We've used this before. It's called the 7-year itch. Now, again, I don't know what the market's going to do, folks. I got in this business in 1984, licensed to sell securities in 85, but I know this. Since 1985, beginning in the year 1987, the stock market has gone through a major correction of at least 10% or more each and every 7-year period, as this graph illustrates. So the point is, the longer you live, the more likely, again, we don't know when it's going to happen, but obviously we'd all have to agree, the more likely we are that we could run smack dab into another one of these huge stock market losses. And the problem is, if you're needing money and taking out income, as we'll see in the next segment, this is a huge, huge strain on not only your money, but also the ability to sleep good at night. So stock market risk is number 1. Number 2 is something called interest rate risk. Now, let me use an example on interest rate risk. My father-in-law, who passed away several years ago, took out in the late 80s an immediate annuity. Now, this immediate annuity was issued by a large insurance company, and the income at that time was based on a rate of return, listen, guaranteed rate of return of 10%. I remember it well. And my father-in-law was nonchalant. Short-term interest rates were 12, 13, 14%. And he's like, okay, great. You're going to guarantee me 10% for the rest of my life? Big deal. Well, it became a really big deal, as my father-in-law admitted years later, when this thing was still paying the same amount of income. And then when he passed away, my mother-in-law, which she just passed away recently, unfortunately, great lady, by the way, but she got the same income. So they lived on 10% money guaranteed for the rest of their life. Folks, you can't get that anymore. So the longer you live, the more interest rate risk enters the fray. The number 3 risk that's associated with living longer is long-term care risk, the fear of going in a nursing home. My mom and I were talking about this. I said, Mom, when you were little, do you remember much about nursing homes? She said, Tony, there weren't hardly any nursing homes. Back then, you just drug your grandparents home to live with you. In fact, she had Grandma Harden living with her in the upstairs. And I said, she had to climb the stairs? She said, oh, yeah, she didn't care. I said, she didn't have one of those little chairs that rode up the steps? And she kind of laughed, said, no, those weren't around. But the point was, folks, people just kind of took care of people. They didn't put them in nursing homes. Kids weren't scattered all over God's creation. But that's not the case now. You need a plan to deal with the eventuality that you could end up in a nursing home or have to be taken care of at home, which is very, very expensive. Now, here's the 4th risk. And when I come back in the next segment, we're going to dive into this. It's going to be really good stuff. This is called sequence of return risk. All right? Sequence of return risk. So keep in mind, as we get ready to take a break and go into the next segment, my mission in life is to get up every day and make sure savers don't worry about running out of money in retirement. When you understand sequence of risk, especially if you've got a 401k or a bunch of money in the market out there, you're going to realize that there is an answer to this problem of possibly running out of money, or what we call sequence of return risk. I'm Tony Walker. Let me get the whiteboard out. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm fiduciary and television show host Tony Walker, inviting you to my newest presentation, Monday, September 10th at 6 o'clock, right here in Louisville. Learn the 4 biggest risks to your IRA and 401k and how to ensure that your income in retirement will last as long as you do. My presentation is free, but registration is required. So log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Can you afford for your money to take a hit with the stock market being so volatile these days? Nobody can time the market, but having a retirement game plan with Tony Walker Financial gives you peace of mind and sleep insurance. Learn how to prevent losses in your retirement accounts and plan your retirement around an income you can never outlive. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com today to schedule a personal meeting with Tony to secure your hard-earned money. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches.
Welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement, and our TNT, or Tony in the Trenches, comes from Jim out of Louisville, who says, Tony, I recently had an advisor sell me on an annuity that pays an upfront bonus of 30% on my original investment, and the agent told me that after 10 years I can take that annuity and the 30% bonus and walk away with all of that money and do whatever I want. Quite frankly, this is starting to sound too good to be true, is it? And what I would say to Jim is, yes, it is. Folks, many of you are falling victim to what I call annuity peddlers. Yes, there are products that pay those kind of bonuses, but you can't just walk away with that money. That money has to be taken out over your lifetime. Here's what I would suggest. Before you buy an annuity, or if you've got an older annuity, let us take a look at that. We are known around the country as leading experts in the field of annuities, and we'd like to help you. In fact, if you'd like to order our Annuity Decision Guide for Savers, man, this thing is a humdinger. You'll learn everything you need to know about annuities, but we're afraid to ask. It's called the Annuity Decision Guide for Savers. Go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You can download it or request a free copy. We'll be happy to mail it to you. All right, we've been talking about sequence of return risk, and as per Investopedia, sequence of return risk means sequence of returns becoming in danger as an individual takes withdrawals from a fund's underlying investments. In other words, the order of this sequence of the annual investment returns is a primary concern for retirees who are living off income. We're going to talk about this in detail, and I'm going to show you an example, but here's the bottom line. When you are retired and when the market goes down, we don't know when it's going to go down, but eventually, folks, the market, as we've talked about, every 7 years goes down. We talked about that in the last segment, folks. Again, every 7 years since 1987, it's gone through a very, very huge downturn of at least 10%. And it may not sound like a lot, but when you start taking money out of an account when it's going down, that's a problem. Now, this whole sequence of return thing gets a little complicated, and it gets a little confusing. And I hearken back to my days of psychology. I majored in psychology. Okay, this is kind of interesting. I got to make sure I got it pronounced right. I think I got a D in this class. It's called a Rorschach ink blot test. See that there? Look at that thing. What do you think that is? America's favorite financial sidekick, Aaron, he has no clue. He's looking at it. But you know what? The psychologists use that to try to judge people's personalities based on the person's perception of what they think that is. Well, you know what? The financial world has their own Rorschach ink blot test. Here's a look at one of these. Look at these things. That's what we call the sequencing rate of return. Man, look how complicated that looks. Most people would look at that if you're a saver and go, what is that? Well, that's some kind of goofy algorithm that's supposed to predict in the future how much income you can take out of your account. And folks, you can't rely on these ambiguous types of tests. Now, it helps to understand some of this. If you're an investor, great. But if you're a saver, this makes no sense whatsoever. So let's do this. We're going to go over to the whiteboard. I'm going to go through an actual example of what's going to happen. We're going to go back in time and imagine 08 hit when the market went down. I'm going to show you what happens with sequencing rates of return. I'm going to make this really simple, and then I'm going to show you how to fight this risk and make sure you don't run out of money. Okay, so we've got an interesting scenario here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a few years, 3 really good years of the stock market, and then I'm going to kind of mix in 2008 in terms of what happened to the market. Again, if you're just now joining us, we're going to show an example of sequencing of returns risk. The idea that the longer you live, this risk, there's 4 of them, this risk will rear its ugly head, particularly when you're drawing out money and if we have a stock market downturn. So let's take a look at this. I've got my cheat notes. This actually happened, by the way. Now keep in mind, this is the S&P 500. This assumes you were 100% in the S&P 500. Many of you weren't. Some of you were diversified. Some of you were even more risky than that. So this is for illustrative purposes, but these are actual numbers as we're going back in history of the S&P 500. Now, in this example, we're using somebody that has a $300,000 401k. Let's say they retired at age 60, all right? So their balance, obviously, is $300,000. Now, in that period of time, that would have been, let's see, 8, 7, 6, 5. So 2005, the S&P did right at about 5%. We're going to imagine that this person wanted to take out $15,000 a year of income. So they made 5%, but they withdrew $15,000 at the beginning of the year. So that left a balance of about $298, all right? So remember, they needed the income at the beginning of the year. So we start back over here. I'm rounding off these numbers, folks. $298. The S&P almost got to 16% the next year. Good year for the S&P. And they still need their $15,000, which so far so good. In fact, their balance grew. Now their balance is up to $328,000. So far you'd say, what's wrong with this, Tony? What a deal. I would agree. Go to the third year. See what we're doing here. You start now at the beginning of the year with $328. We're just bringing that number here. The S&P went up around 5.5%. So far so good again. We're having fun with our money. No worries. We're sleeping good at night. And it actually goes up a little bit to $331. Now, 63, okay, we're imagining this is what happened in 2008. So we're going to go back in time. We're imagining you're retired now and we have another 2008. Everybody following this, okay? We start off with our 331. Remember, that's our beginning value. However, the market goes down 37%. Down, drops 37%. We got to stop here a minute. If you're a saver and this happens, I know how savers operate. Savers are going to sit there and go, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Should I draw my $15,000? Should I just try to scrimp and go on the cow can diet? What am I supposed to do? Well, let's say you got to have the money. So now this is where sequencing of returns risk comes in because we've lost 37% of our money. Now, if you went through this 08 deal and you were back in the old days of the 401k and you hadn't retired, you didn't notice it as bad because you just waited for it to come back. But folks, we're imagining you're retired. There's no waiting. You need your money, all right? So what happens is you take your $15,000, and here's what's scary. That drops your balance down to $200,000. The problem is, what if this is not over with yet? You say, well, Tony, surely it wouldn't go down again. Does the market drop 2 years in a row? It did in 2000 and 2001 and 2002. Folks, we had 3 straight market drops during those periods of time. And if you needed your income, that means the balance would be on a roller coaster. It would be disastrous if you had to do that. So we are talking about savers here, and understanding the minds of savers is why we use some of these products. We have our Charles Schwab platform. I can put some of your money in the market. If you're a saver, no more than 30% am I going to put in there unless you tell me to. I'll do what you want to do. But we always take the approach, why risk your money if you don't have to? So you say, well, Tony, I don't understand. How are we going to avoid sequencing of risk? How am I going to guarantee that I take $15,000 out? And remember, we're talking about longevity risk. How can you guarantee that that income will last as long as you do? In comes the fixed indexed annuity with what we call an income rider. So what we would do in this example, we would carve out some of this money, and if we took the whole $300,000, we ran the numbers on this. As of the interest rates as of today, the insurance company backing the annuity would guarantee $15,000 a year for life. Doesn't matter if you live 20 years or 40 years. Now you say, well, what happens to the balance, Tony? Is that going to just maintain itself? Do I get the $300,000 left to my kids? Probably not. And this is where a lot of people selling annuities don't understand how these income riders work. Remember our Tony in the Trenches. We'll guarantee to pay you that. We even have products that pay these 20 and 30% bonuses up front. But you've got to remember, the account balance will more than likely go down to zero. And you say, well, that doesn't sound good. My kids don't get anything? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But here's the problem.
Under the stock market scenario, if this thing goes down to zero, you're out of money. With a fixed indexed annuity with an income rider, you can never outlive your money. Tell you what, there's another great booklet you might want to order. What we're talking about here, basically, folks, is mailbox money. Mailbox money is guaranteed income you can never outlive. Why don't you order a booklet I wrote? It's literally called Mailbox Money for Life. It's easy to get. All you got to do is go over to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You can either download the booklet absolutely free, or if you'd like a hard copy, just ask us to request one and we'll mail one to you right away. That's called Mailbox Money for Life. So maybe you're sitting there thinking, Tony, how do I try to guarantee an income I can never outlive? You may have a 401k, money in the bank, a lump sum pension, old IRAs that are sitting there. Maybe you're thinking about buying an annuity and you're really confused or concerned that the people selling the annuity, number one, either don't understand it, or number two, are not going to service the sale after the annuity goes in place. We can help. I would love the opportunity to meet you. Just go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or you can call us now 24/7 to schedule an appointment at 877-499-9255. We'll be happy to accommodate you. I can meet with you in either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky office. And again, best of all, you meet with me in person, and there's absolutely no charge or obligation on your part. Well, does the Bible have anything to say about sequencing of returns? Well, it does have something to say about simplicity. This, folks, can be very complicated. What we do in the Worry-Free Retirement is make things more simple, and we believe that God has a mission to make your life more simple as well and to help you worry less about money. When I come back, I'm going to share some very, very interesting scripture, and hopefully you'll be encouraged to worry less about your money as well. I'll be right back.
Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, thrift savings account, 403b, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government has essentially a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. Tony Walker calls this the 401k tax tumor. For over 33 years, retirement specialist Tony Walker has helped thousands of savers worry less about money by creating game plans to deal with your tax tumor. Get control of your retirement by controlling the taxes owed on it. Schedule a free meeting to see if you can reduce your tax tumor and provide a guaranteed income you can never outlive. To get started, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. With people living longer than ever before, Americans are now faced with the real possibility of running out of money in retirement. But there is a solution to this problem. Nationally recognized retirement specialist Tony Walker will show you how to make your 401k last as long as you do. Monday, September 10th at 6 p.m. right here in Louisville. Learn the 4 major financial risks to living longer and how to avoid them. Monday, September 10th. Register now and log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. And I guess if we could boil down today's show topic, it might be the following. Be careful in life because things aren't always as they appear. Whether it's not getting the full story on how annuities work properly, or taking the lead from Wall Street by just blindly throwing all your money into complicated, uncertain stock market risks and exposing yourself to what we call sequence of return risk. Irregardless of what you might be trying to understand in your finances, the key is to realize this. The world is not truly concerned about us, nor whether we really run out of money or not. Yet, here we are. We're bombarded each and every day by opinion after opinion about what we must do, right, and not do. And of course, that's just unimaginable, folks. The good news is God is not in the opinion business. God does care about us, and God is not a God of confusion, but a God of certainty. And here's the hard part for us to understand as Christians. God actually demands us to be worry-free when it comes to life and money. Because when you think about it, if you and I are worrying over our money all the time, we're basically admitting that we're worried about our future. And thus, we reveal that sometimes our faith is waning and we're not having faith that God can provide for us. In Watchman Nee's powerful book, Love Not the World, Nee exposes this very concern and refers to the prosperity we live in today as actually being abnormal. In fact, let's take a look at what the Bible has to say about money, where Jesus talks about our needs. In fact, let's go to Matthew 6:25, where he says the following. Jesus says, "For this reason I say to you, do not be anxious for your life as to what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor your body as to what you shall put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing?" And then look at Luke 17:26, basically through 29, he says, there's a time when man, he reminds us of this, from the time man has roamed the earth, man has had to eat, he's had to drink, he's had to buy, he's had to sell, he's had to plant, and man has continued to build. But he reminds us, even in the days of Lot, man's life was brought to a screeching halt, and all of these things that man was worried about didn't really matter. So what is Jesus saying? I think he's saying is to quit worrying about the things you feel you don't have, but which God has already planned to provide you. Friend, you and I can create all sorts of worry. I do it all the time. And sometimes we worry because we've overcomplicated things that really should be very, very simple. That's what we try to do with the WorryFree Retirement. My mission in life is actually trying to make your plans for the future very simple. We have taken great pains over the years and spent a lot of money to create proprietary software that shows you how to simply and easily use and enjoy and protect your money. And guess what? I'm offering absolutely free to sit down and share with you how the WorryFree Retirement can help you worry less about money by providing a simple game plan that, yes, includes mailbox money for life. So here's what you need to do. To meet with me in person at either our Bowling Green, Kentucky office or Louisville, Kentucky office, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Once there, you'll have an option to meet with me. It's called Let's Get Started. Now, your information is confidently shared with our offices. They will contact you to set up a convenient time for you and I to sit down and just review your situation at absolutely no cost or obligation. Then, here's the best part. I will put together a written game plan that doesn't cost you a penny. Folks, a lot of people out there make you move the money over before you see anything. Don't be so foolish. We will give you a written game plan that you can take home and study. Then we can meet again to discuss your questions, make sure you fully understand what we're doing, and then and only then will we ask you to move money into our process. It really is that simple. Maybe you're watching this on the air, and we've even gotten a little chat bot that we've stuck onto our website. This is really handy. We realize that our TV shows are on during the weekend. Obviously, our offices are closed, but we have a 24-hour call center that can take your message. Plus, our Tony Walker Financial chat bot, I love this little chat bot, can try to answer some of your immediate questions. So take advantage of that technology today. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. I've certainly enjoyed being with you. You remember, though, between now and next week, between now and the time we're going to see each other again, if all else fails, you be worry-free. Make it a good one.
Thank you for watching the Worry-Free Retirement with Tony Walker. If you need a safe and simple game plan for your retirement, log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and schedule a free, no-obligation meeting with Tony.